Step one. Step one, guys, if you guys have your legacy guides, let's get to it. Page 13 in the legacy guide. Open it up. What does it say? The principle is honesty. Uh-oh. Honesty. We're going to start. It's the first thing I'm teaching you about. It might be the last thing you guys have ever been. Honesty is a requirement in this program. Now, what does step one say? It says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and I'm going to say drugs or food or porn or gaming or another person, whatever. You're going to hear some more evidence over this weekend that this program works for anybody, no matter what you had or have. And that your lives had become unmanageable. Now, I'll tell you guys, I probably could have told you very quickly on when I started using alcohol that I was powerless over alcohol and drugs. I couldn't stop. But being unmanageable, my life unmanageable, that was another question. Because you know what, man, if my life's unmanageable, then I'm worthless, I'm no good, I'm not valuable, right? I see all the heads bobbing. So we struggle for a long time with this idea that how could I possibly be unmanageable? But somehow, some way, this thing will drive you to a place where unmanageability is clearly what you're defined as. So what we're going to do tonight now for a while is we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this disease. We're going to talk about addiction. We're going to talk about unmanageability a little bit and talk about a phenomenon of craving and this idea of an allergy, which we'll talk about, and this strange thinking we seem to have. And then the spiritual malady. And these are the three components that these men back in the 1930s who wrote this book found out that were in place, that defined the addict. They seem to have this allergy, this different reaction to alcohol than other people, right? When they drank it, it was different than how other people had it. It caused a phenomenon of craving, which means one was never enough, right? And then they had this funky thinking that would come around, which was, let's see how many people have said this. I'll never do that again. How many said? The hands are going up. I'll never do that again. And did it before the day was over. Why do we think this way? And then this unworthiness, which we're going to define maybe as a spiritual malady, this emptiness that we have, this no hole that we have, God-shaped hole, just sucks us in and sees how worthless we are. And the cycle goes around and around and around, right? So what about the disease of alcoholism? I'm going to read from the first paragraph on the first page here. So the disease of alcoholism manifests as a physical allergy. Any medical people in this room? It's not an allergy. Allergies aren't that. We know that. Science is going to say it really isn't an allergy, but it works like one, right? It has a funny reaction when we have it. So they called it an allergy back then. It's just that when they drank alcohol or took drugs, it did something different to them than it did to other people. So there was a physical element to it that they couldn't control. It's accompanied by a peculiar mental state that precedes the taking of a drink or a drug or engaging a behavior that has the addict in bondage. How many of you feel in bondage by it? You're in, right? Put that. You just can't do anything about it, or you couldn't do anything about it. Preventing them from breaking the destructive cycle, powerlessness. Then the addiction is fueled by the spiritual malady. And I found this definition of spiritual malady because I didn't really know what that meant. What do you mean spiritual malady? What is that, right? So I found this definition and I thought it fit really well. See if this fits with you guys. It simply means that within their soul, your soul, my soul, or the core of your being, you suffer from a profound loneliness, selfishness, or general maladjustment to life. They have managed to cut themselves off from the existence and any notion of spirituality. Boy, that was me. Lonely, selfish, and general maladjustment to life. How many of you have ever said, I just don't fit in? You always felt like you didn't fit in. I'm just different than everybody else. And you've cut yourself off from any connection to spirituality because we thought we were worthless and no good because we couldn't get a hold of this, right? The cycle goes on and on. So, what is the difference? What defines us as addicts? Is it the spiritual malady? How many of you would say it's the spiritual malady? So we got one. Well, let's think about that a minute. Don't we know other people that you might define as having a spiritual malady that can drink normally? Right? Some people that seem maladjusted to life, profoundly lonely, selfish. And you'd say, yeah, they got a spiritual malady. Maybe you have family members. So you say, wait a minute, then that can't be the thing. That can't be, because everybody might have a spiritual malady, right? But the allergy and that thinking, that's what defines us. That's the difference. So let's talk about that for a minute. I want to tell you a few of my stories so that we can define this a little bit better. I can tell you that I went out to have 2 beers 200 or 300 times. And maybe was able to do it once or twice. If you gave me a lie detector test when I walked out the door, I'm going to go have 2 beers, I'd pass it. Because I really thought I was gonna. I thought I could do it. I took 1, I took 2, and then it was back 2 days later, 3 days later, I don't know. And it didn't matter what was going on, guys. It didn't matter what the consequences were. And then, after 100 times of doing that, I would still get up from dinner and go for 2 beers. How many times? What thinking does it take us? This is that peculiar state of thinking that we have, that it's not going to happen this time. How many of us have thought that? It's not going to happen this time. And it always happened. But yet, again and again, this is a cycle we can't break. Unmanageability, powerlessness. We're going to talk about that in step 2. So, I was in the Army when I was younger. And when I was in the Army, I was like G.I. Joe. I passed all the tests. I went up the rank. Everything was number 1. I was Soldier of the Year 2 times and all of this stuff. And I got to a place in my career where a bunch of the officers got together and said to me, we're going to send you to flight school. We think you could be a helicopter pilot, right? My ticket's getting ready to be punched. Are you kidding me? They're going to send me to flight school to be a pilot? Career set. So I went through all the tests of physicals and fitness tests to be accepted into flight school, and I had one last test to take. And it was an awareness, it's a spatial awareness test. I had to go up to a flight facility, and it was my last barrier to an opportunity to change my entire life. If there was one night Tom needed to stay home from drinking, that was the night. Tom got up from dinner, and what did he say? I'm going for 2 beers. I came home at 4 in the morning, threw on my uniform, went up and promptly blew that test and threw that entire opportunity away in my life. Manageable? Yeah, I don't think so. Mental twist, peculiar state of thinking? Yeah, absolutely. Who does that but us? How many of you have stories like that? Yeah, the hands go up again. Crazy stuff that we do. Unmanageable. Guys, there is a solution. There's an answer to it. Now, today I can tell you that the experiences that I went through since then, because the drinking continued for another 25 years after that, gave me that story to tell you guys. I wouldn't have told you that's why I had that happen back then, but today I do. I know that what I have to do is share that with you guys so that you know that I do understand where you guys are coming from, if that at all defines you. If that at all defines you guys, you're in the right place. Now listen, sometimes people are in retreats like ours, and they're not sure whether they're an addict or not. Anybody in here not really sure if they're an addict or not? I mean, maybe you're not. Sometimes it's true. People aren't sure. They want to come in. But if you had any of that thinking like I did, I'm here to tell you, only a connection with a power greater than yourself, getting a new manager and following a simple set of tools that we're going to give you are going to solve the problem for you. And most of you, none of you raised your hand when you said you didn't think you were an addict. You guys are all in the right place. So on the page, bottom of page 13, it says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous. Who's the we? Those guys. No, it's those guys that wrote the book. They're talking in past tense, and this is going to be a very interesting concept for the rest of the weekend. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have, from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, to show other alcoholics and addicts precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of the book. And as I told you, it's the main purpose that we're here. We want to show you how we recovered. Do what we did, you'll get what we got. For them, for you guys, we hope the pages and the teachings over this weekend will be so convincing that no further authentication is necessary. We think the account of our experiences and the one of like Daryl's will help everyone better understand the addict, the alcoholic, and many comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. They knew it, and so do we. Our way of living, guys. Don't we all want a way of living? Doesn't that sound like a better thing that we're doing this weekend? Is getting a way of living that can lead us to success? That's what we're going to be doing. Teaching you a better way of living. Maybe a first time you've had a way of living that led you to success and freedom from whatever addiction has you in bondage. On page 14 it says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, again, we believed, those that wrote the book and those that had this experience, that the action of alcohol and drugs and some other things that cause the same phenomenon of craving, which we know will happen, is a manifestation of an allergy, we talked about it, and that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Don't we hate that person that can have one drink? What's up with that? How many of us know you go to Christmas, you go somewhere and you see the half a glass of wine that your mom left in the cup? What's that about? I don't understand that. So my girlfriend now, she did this 2 weeks ago, and I keep telling the story because I'm still amazed. It wasn't tempting to me, but she's a normie. We call them normies, right? She can drink. She could care less if she drinks. She can, not. She pours a glass of whiskey with a piece of ice in it, puts it on the counter, and doesn't drink it. See? You guys, what's that about? Have you guys ever poured a glass of liquor and not drank it? Never. I looked right at her in her face and I said, you are not one of us. You know, she's coming next weekend actually to go through Malibu. But that's that difference with us, that allergy, that physical thing. That's the difference with us that we need, that leads us into unmanageability and requires us to have a connection with some power because we're powerless. I hate those guys. The allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form or drugs. So this is where some people say, see, you got to always be recovering. No, I mean, if you're allergic to peanut butter and you don't eat peanut butter, do you ever have the reaction from it? No. Right? If you have pneumonia And you don't say, I'm always recovering from pneumonia, do you? Once you're better, you recovered. Could you get it again? I guess if you did all the wrong things, you could get it again. But while you're recovered and you're not displaying all the symptoms of it, you're normal, right? Same thing. It's not that we can ever, you want pneumonia again, it's not that we can ever drink again. I can't.
It's living in the victory.
It's living in the victory. Yep. Recovered. It's a state of mind, and that we'll tell you about it, but it's also a state of being. Right. I am never tempted, ever, to drink alcohol. Believe me, it can happen, and it happened quickly for me. The obsession was removed, just the way these guys will explain it, and we'll keep explaining it over the weekend. It was removed. A little bit further down, it says, after they've succumbed to the desire to drink again, this is people who have tried to stop drinking. The well-known state of a spree, craving develops, they emerge remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. We've already talked about that, right? This repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope for his recovery. An entire psychic change. You remember when Daryl was talking about being on this side, where he couldn't imagine not drinking? And now on this side, he can't imagine drinking, wanting to tell his old self? We get that. I know that I had no idea about life without drinking. I didn't have the capability of drinking or drugs and everything that went with it. I needed a psychic change. How many of you, if you had a psychic change, or you say that's what it would take? That's what happened to these guys. On the other hand, and strange as it may seem to those who don't understand, once the psychic changes occurred, this very same person who seemed doomed, and I felt like I was doomed, no way out, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol or drugs or anything else that has you in addiction. The only effort necessary was required to follow a few simple rules, which we're going to outline for you this weekend. Easily able to control his desire for alcohol or drugs. Wouldn't that be nice? Easily able to control. We're talking about that, and we're only on step one. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who are just as hopeless as Bill. We know thousands of men and women who are just as hopeless as Daryl, as me, as some of you. Nearly all have recovered. They've solved the drink and drug problem. These are bold statements in the book, guys. Have you guys read these statements in this book? It's so strange that it hasn't caused more of a reaction or more of a result through the recovery community. We're just in the really beginning stages, and it's talking about problems being solved and being recovered. First step. The fact is that most alcoholics, guys, and drug addicts, for some obscure reason, this is from page 24, we're reading from page 15 on the Legacy Guide now, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Do you feel like you lost the power of choice? Was there a time when you thought you still had a choice? Where maybe, if you think back, I could have made a change? I think back, the first time I drank alcohol at 15, I got smashed and was found in a bathtub. So I think I had a choice of that first drink I took. The very first one. That was it, though. After that, I didn't have a choice. So this idea that we have this lifestyle choice, how many of you guys chose to have your lives ruined by drugs and alcohol? You said, one day, I'm going to just throw everything away, right? But I guess, had I run into some people like us early on and heard this message and saw the signs that I had, maybe it would have been possible for me to avoid the path that I had to take? I don't know. But it would have taken a message like we're going to give to you over this weekend. I don't know. But they believed there was a point of no return, and so do I. There certainly was a point of no return for me, and most of us will tell you that story. There's a point where that was it. There was nothing we could do. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. What really would it have taken for me to stay home that one night when I had the flight test? If I had an ounce of willpower, that would work. This is crazy what this thing does to us. I couldn't stay home that one night, just once. We're unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We have this blank spot where we forget the humiliation and remorse of the last drunk, the ridiculous stuff we did at the bar, what we said to somebody. Why do we forget that? And they say, of even a week or a month ago, I'm going to talk to you about the night before I wake up the next day. How quickly we shake it off, or it doesn't affect us, and we move on and drink again. We are without defense against the first drink. Which one gets us drunk? If you never had one drink, would you ever get drunk? We got to get you guys a defense against the first drink. Wouldn't that do it? You don't take that first one, you'll never take any others. I want you to leave here this weekend with a defense against the first drink. And the first thing that they learned was that to fully concede to their innermost selves that they were addicts. It's the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. I'm reading from page 15, guys, and these are excerpts out of the Big Book from page 30. So I'm reading straight out of the Big Book in the Legacy Guide. We know of no real alcoholic who ever regains control. All of us felt at times we were regaining control, but such intervals usually were brief. We're inevitably followed by still less control, which led to, in time, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. That's not a good place. And we are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type, and your type, maybe, if that's how you define, are in a grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period of time, it only gets worse, never better. We've seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Again, then, there you go. You can't be recovered. Stay with us. Commencing the drink after a period of sobriety, we are in short time as bad as ever. If we're planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune. The alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases, neither he or any other human can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. And we're going to tell you who their higher power was this weekend. Amen. A higher power, not any higher power you want. Yeah. We're going to talk about this later. The higher power. Switch over to page 16. And we're going to take a little test here for you guys. I'm going to ask you 3 questions in a minute. And the answers are yes, yes, and anything. But I'm going to ask you, I shouldn't give you the key, but those are the correct answers. Think about this, guys, and it's time to be honest, right? What's the principle here? Honesty, right? If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when you're drinking or taking drugs or engaged in whatever it is that has you in bondage, you have little control over the amount or the amount of time you do it, you are probably an alcoholic or an addict. I think I knew I was unmanageable right after that episode with my flight test. But it still took 20 years for me to get to a place where I was going to ever do anything about it. And I came to my end after a month of straight drinking and drugging around the clock, and got to a place where I was where Daryl was. I'm either going to die or I've got to do something. I had that dilemma. I was at a crossroads, and we'll talk about that in step 2. And I had been so badly beaten by it, by admitting unmanageability. What could I lose? I mean, what more had I already lost? I already knew I drank alcoholically. I drank way more than all my friends, even the ones that partied. Now don't we surround ourselves with people that party a lot? Because we like them, so we can kind of get hidden in there. But there's a little difference. We do just a little more than everybody else. We do one more day than everybody else does. We start a little earlier than everybody else does, right? Although many times we surround ourselves with people just like us who want to be right in this room with us at retreats, trying to get over what it is that has them in ruin. But once I knew that I was an addict, an alcoholic, I had the allergy, I get the phenomenon of craving, and I'm terrible, worthless, no good, and without help, I'm never going to get over this. I'm completely unmanageable. When I hit that place, that's when real hope started. I wouldn't have told you that then, but I'll tell you now it was. It was a surrender. So I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions. And let's see if you get the answers right. And these are answers for you guys. These are your own, this is your own result. Question 1, do you have a drinking or addiction problem?
Yes.
Do you have a drinking or addiction problem?
Yes.
Do you want to do something about it?
Yes.
What are you willing to do about it?
Anything, everything.
Yes, yes, and anything. And everything. If you said yes, yes, and everything, and were honest to yourself, you just took step 1. You can sign your book. Listen, guys, you never have to do that again. That's the last time you ever have to take a step 1. It's done.